Health and safety message, page 3 of your agenda. I'll take it that you've all read that. And it hasn't changed since last time. We have an apology from Councillor Bingham. Could I have a mover and a seconder?
Happy to move.
Susan. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Apology accepted. First matter of business today, we have one member, Mike Davey. Could you please come up to the lectern and read your declaration?
Thanks, Chair. I, Michael Gerard Davey, declare that I will faithfully and impartially and according to the best of my skill and judgment execute and perform in the best interests of the Taranaki region the powers, authorities and duties vested or imposed upon me as member of the Taranaki Regional Council by virtue of the Local Government Act 2002, the Local Government Official Information and Meeting Act 1987 or any other act.
That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Welcome aboard, Mike. Nearly missed the boat. Could everyone please make sure they have their microphones turned on? They should be green. All right, we have some representatives from Taranaki Federated Farmers. Leadham Gibbs, you're doing the deputation today. Welcome. We've allowed 10 minutes. Yeah, up there we've allowed 10 minutes and 5 minutes for questions. And this is largely pertaining to tab 11.
Good morning, councillors. Firstly, thanks to Chair Craig Williamson for agreeing to the hearing of our deputation. We formally introduce ourselves as representative members of Taranaki Federated Farmers. I, Leadham Gibbs, speak as the elected president of our organisation. With me are some of the members of our executive committee. Nick Brown represents sheep and beef. Sam Ebbett and Katie Sutherland represent dairy. We also have with us one of our members. Federated Farmers is a membership-based organisation which represents farmers throughout New Zealand. Here in Taranaki we have 837 members and we are active participants in the community, not only advocating for farmers but providing support during adverse events, personal development opportunities, support and networking for our members. We have had a long-standing relationship that has been constructive with the Taranaki Regional Council. When seeking this deputation, we had clear indication from your chair that we needed to stick to the item that is being considered by the Council's agenda today, being the process of identifying suitable independent candidates for committees and the associated skills matrix. We will respect that. However, we do have some questions and suggestions about the skills matrix in the paper in front of you, which are coloured by the context of the removal of the long-standing Federated Farmers representative from the Operations and Regulatory Committee. To the matter at hand, the item for consideration today, titled Appoint Independent Members to Council Committees. The matter for consideration today by Council regarding independent member appointments asks councillors to receive the memo, approve the proposed skills matrix, agrees to have it circulated and notes it is determined that the decision to do so is not considered significant. Firstly, we'd like to note from the outset that Federated Farmers agrees with the appointment of an independent to the Executive Audit and Risk Committee. Such an appointment is best practice, in line with recommendations from the Office of the Auditor General, and helps ensure competency in financial matters. This is in the interest of every ratepayer and member of the Taranaki community. As you work through the skills matrix and consideration of appointments, we encourage councillors to review material regarding audit and risk committees published by the Office of the Auditor General, which provides insights and recommendations around terms of reference. That an independent appointment will be made to the Executive Audit and Risk Committee is recorded in the meeting minutes of this Council dated 4 November 2025 and can be found on page 9 of today's meeting papers in point D and point F. The terms of reference state that the independent member is to be the committee deputy chair. However, we note that no such instruction regarding an independent appointment to the Operations and Regulatory Committee is to be found in the motions agreed to And Schedule A from the memo in the triennial meeting sets out the membership of the committee, which does not include an independent member in the terms of reference. So we are somewhat perplexed as to why a skills matrix for the Operations and Regulatory Committee has appeared with reference to independent appointments. Consideration of the video recording of the first triennial meeting and the local democracy reporting of the meeting does not clear things up. Now we find promise of a paper on committee options and have to question how this turned into an exploration of an option for an independent seat based on a skills matrix. We disagree with the Chair, who has informed us in writing that the matter of representation was resolved on 4 November. To make matters worse, we consider that when asked to make the decision on the Operations and Regulatory Committee on the 4th of November, councillors were provided with insufficient advice and options in accordance with Section 77 of the Local Government Act. The report did not provide councillors with options other than adopting the recommendation. The report also failed to detail that a significant change was being made, with a long-standing position being omitted. That some councillors stated during the 4 November meeting that they had not noticed the removal of the position is yet further evidence that illustrates our point that the advice provided to councillors could have been more fulsome. We would encourage councillors to ask more questions of staff and seek further advice in the future. In respect to the matter before you today, we ask that councillors nip this in the bud and firmly reject the proposition for an independent seat on the Operations and Regulatory Committee. At this stage, we note that Section 78 of the Local Government Act requires local authorities to consider the views of persons likely to be affected by or who have had an interest in the matter when making decisions. The memorandum before councillors notes that the views of the community have been taken into account in making the recommendations to you. However, there is no commentary regarding which views within the community have been taken into account when preparing the report. The statement appears to be a copy and pasted section in every item of today's agenda. We would therefore encourage you, councillors, to inquire as to which views were considered in the preparation of the report you are considering today, and what information helped to inform the staff advice that views of the community have been given due consideration when constructing the skills matrix and recommendation regarding independent members. For the avoidance of doubt, to ensure that councillors are able to take into account the view of the community that Federated Farmers represents, we wish to note that we wrote to Council expressing our disappointment at the removal of the Federated Farmers representative from the Operations and Regulatory Committee. Our disappointment that we had not been informed, let alone consulted with in relation to this matter, and our disappointment in the lack of report from officers regarding the reasons for that recommendation. If the Council is to proceed with the recommendation before them today to approve a skills matrix for an independent position on the Operations and Regulatory Committee, we believe that the Council should ensure that the skills matrix includes the skills and representations that have been lost from the committee by the changes to the committee membership we compared to previous trienniums. We point out that as a committee of council, the membership of committee should not only consider skills but also representation of stakeholders or community members that ensure that the council can excel in delivering on the purpose of the Local Government Act, requirements regarding decision making as well as consideration of the well-being of the communities you represent. We suggest that the skills brought to the committee should include representation from the community of hands-on rural interests. We recommend strengthening the primary industry knowledge column in the matrix. It should include being actively engaged in farming operations and knowledgeable in farming practices at a practical level. The appointee should also be required to have a network to lean on to seek insights regarding the level of services the committee is charged with overseeing and the delivery and monitoring of. This includes the management of infrastructure assets, biodiversity and biosecurity functions and other regulatory matters. At present, the skills matrix considers a number of technical specialist skills that would ordinarily be provided by council officers. We ask the council to consider whether all those skills are necessary for the committee, given staff advice will always be available. To conclude, we thank councillors for their time and consideration of our concerns and ask that in the first instance that you do not proceed with the appointment of an independent Operations and Regulatory Committee. If councillors wish to proceed, then we suggest you request more fulsome options from staff for ensuring any skills matrix, which includes skills, representation, experience that has previously been provided by Federated Farmers, appointment to the committee in the previous 35 years. We hope that we can continue to have a good working relationship with TRC and look forward to further discussion and debates on matters important to the many Taranaki farmers who are part of your community. Thank you.
Thank you, Leadham. Obviously, we're going to have a discussion about the skills matrix, etc., when we get to tab 11, so I don't want to have that discussion now. I see Steve's been writing lots of notes as well, so we'll get some good lead there from officers too, so we'll discuss that then. But does anyone have any questions for Leadham pertaining to her deputation? Neil?
Yes, Leadham, I'd just like to ask that this process of having somebody on this committee has been over the last 35 years, and indeed has been in my time, all the time. I've been here 27 years or something, and in that time I'm not aware of any problem or issue that occurred. It was always good to have a federated farmers person on the committee because of two reasons. One being, and I did make this point at the earlier meeting, one being that the farmers could see what was going on. It's a direct thing. And the second good reason was simply that the farmers' advice about lots of issues was available. So can you think of any reason why the change would have occurred that you're aware of?
I'm not aware of any reason why the change needed to occur.
Anyone else? Mike?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Leadham. I really enjoyed that presentation. I'm a member of Federated Farmers, and I'm proud of it too. And I guess just working with you people on that regulatory committee that I work with is very good. And if you go back away over 25 years ago, when the riparian management program was set, it was done with feds and farmers. And it's an internationally recognised program, you know, and Taranaki, we did it, you know. 6 million plants plus have been planted, both sides of the stream, 99% have been planted, 7 wire fences, and the kicker here is that you guys paid for those plants, you paid for the wire and posts, you look after the riparian margins with pest control and weed control, but the kicker here is you actually pay rates on that and it's unproductive because you can't graze it. So that all started here with a communication with you people and the friendship and the bonds we have, and I'd like to see that continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Just a question.
Question, thanks,
Chair.
Sean.
In terms of the two committees, this one here, the Operations Regulatory Committee, and the other one, Planning and Policy, what is the advantage of being on the Operations and Regulatory as opposed to the other one?
This is the other one is where you set the rules, and then the Operations and Regulatory Committee is where they play out. And where things play out is where farmers live and breathe their everyday lives. And what we see as the great advantage to us being on there is we can provide a level of what is reasonable, so that, you know, rightly or wrongly, people are prosecuted. We in Taranaki live in a highly regulated environment. There's a lot of oversight over our farms. Land management officers come to our farms all the time and have powers to notice things, and you know, and that really upsets people. People find that quite intrusive and invasive, and it just allows there to be a farmer that is on the ground, that understands what it's like to be on the ground, and relating to regional council and saying whether or not something, you know, is reasonable, and really having that very practical understanding of what's playing out, and that being their sole purpose to be there.
So just a supplementary to that.
Yeah.
So have there been occasions where you've been able to bring input to that committee that has obviously helped committee members to make the right decision as opposed to a wrong decision?
I haven't personally sat on that committee, but if you don't mind, Councillor Hughes has informed me that as the chair of that committee, she has found that person over the past 3 years useful on the committee, and that they have provided good advice and insight.
Thank you.
Any more questions? So to answer the first question,
Oh, sorry, yes.
if there were a preference to policy and planning and ops and reg, it would be ops and reg, is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying there
No.
wouldn't be a preference, that we would see value in both. That
They're
you know,
both
both have
important.
to be there where the rules are set and they play out. They go hand in hand.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any more questions? Okay, thank you, Leadham, and thank you for coming along.
Thank you.
Obviously,
We will stay
you're
for the
welcome.
item.
Yeah, you're welcome to stay.
We'll stay for the item.
For the
Thank you.
Okay. Recommendation is that we receive the deputation from Taranaki Federated Farmers. I'll move that.
I'll second it.
That's right. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? There are none. Next up, item number 6, we have the confirmation of the training meeting minutes, 4th of November. I will take them as read. Any corrections, comments,
Yes, Mr.
questions?
Chair, it's not so much corrections, but just a feeling that, as far as I'm concerned anyway, that it doesn't cover a lot of the matters that were actually there. For example, we had a discussion on the day about the whole concept of whether we would have an independent chair or not, or rather, independent person on the executive committee. And in that situation, I actually raised the point about the fact that I thought this was a falling between two stools, where you had you either had a chair who was that person, or you had, I know this refers to the other side of the equation, but I also raised the point about the fact that what was this going to cost? I thought the report that we were told we were going to have was going to cover these matters, but it seems as if it was drawn away into a whole lot of discussion about the quality of people on these committees. So my personal view is that it's another example of where the minutes are either too scant or don't actually line out exactly what actually happens on these occasions. And you have to go back to looking at the recorded account to find out what actually happened. So I just feel personally, as I said, that the minutes were too scant. I'm not asking for a change in the things, but just simply saying I was dissatisfied with what turned up.
So are you saying that item 11 or tab number 11 doesn't cover what was discussed and agreed to
Well,
at the
I
meeting?
mean, there were other matters which don't seem to have seem to have been reported exactly as what I would imagine it to be. Maybe other councillors may have a feeling about.
Was that around the cost?
It was about the cost, and it was about what the purpose of this particular thing was. Whether Mr. Clote has been doing it, and if he wants to change, I just felt and made the point, and I know it's going to come back into this report, but the point I was making at the time was just paying somebody to turn up on the day who has no other connection and just saying, paying them whatever, and if you're going to get somebody decent and your skills matrix is saying it, that person could cost, I know what they cost in other places. I employ those kind of people sometimes in my own business. And I just felt that we hadn't really made a decision finally on what the thing was.
Let's not relitigate the decision that we made. So we did make a decision.
Most of these points actually relate to the quality of advice in item 11, which is not the item before the council. The item before the council is whether the minutes of the 4th of November meeting are true and correct record or not relitigating the debate about the adequacy or otherwise of a future report on the agenda. The time for that is when that item is being discussed, which will arise shortly, no doubt.
All right, but I just felt that
Okay,
the minutes were scant and didn't actually flag any of this.
Noted, Neil. Any other comments? Right, could I have a mover and second? All those members, thanks, Tom. Second up. Thank you, Susan. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? There are none. Okay, receipt of Ops and Reg Committee meeting minutes, 2nd of December. Susan, were you there? Did you
Yes,
chair
I was.
that? And would you like to move that?
I could think of nothing that would give me greater joy.
Oh, that's wonderful. Any comments that you would like to make at the same time?
I consider the minutes to be a true and accurate record, and I encourage the affirmation of them by confirmation now.
Thank you. Any comments? Any contrary views? There appear to be none. I will second that. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? There are none. Policy and Planning Committee meeting minutes. This is the one you chaired, isn't it, Jonathan?
Correct.
Any comments, and would you be prepared to move those?
Yes, I'm very happy to move that we accept these minutes.
A seconder, thank you, Donna. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? There are none. Tom, receipt of the Audit and Risk Committee meeting minutes. You happy to move those?
Yes, no comments, Chair.
Thank you very much. Seconder, please. Thanks, Alan. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? There are none. Okay, external appointees to council committees. Recommendations are there on page 28 to 29. Is this you?
I'll move, Chair, if it's...
We'll just
Doesn't seem
Nicole
there's a
talk
need
to
for
this.
discussion, but through you, Chair. The report is pretty self-explanatory, so I'll take that as read. Essentially, it's just outlining the appointees that we have received. So, Stratford District Council in South Taranaki, as well as Federated Farmers. Wakatahi MPDC held their meeting on the 10th of December to confirm their appointees, but they haven't actually formally notified. So, a second report will come back probably in February when we actually have their formal nominees received.
Is the first meeting next year the ordinary meeting, or will it be? We'll do
First
that.
meeting will be the Policy and Planning Operations and Regulatory Committee meetings. I think 20th of February off the top of my head is the council meeting.
So we won't even have them then.
We
Can
had
we?
we had Councillor Grant Boyd and we had Leadham at Policy and Planning as well. So I would hazard a guess that we would treat them in the same.
So they can come and participate.
Yep.
Good. Okay. Any questions? No.
I'll move, Chair.
We have a mover, Tom, seconder. Thanks, John. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? And there are none. Right, item number 11, appointment of independent members to council committees. Who's introducing this? Nicole?
That's me. Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair, and through you again. Leadham, just want to acknowledge your kōrero. Thank you for that. Fair Farmers for turning up to support. Appreciate that as well. The paper that's in front of you is essentially introducing a skills matrix, which we're hoping to use to guide us to understand what skills gaps. Obviously, the Feds have identified some areas, but councillors are elected based on public opinion, not necessarily a skills appointment, and we never actually canvass that with you around what your skills are, your background. Obviously, Donna, we know you've you've been associated with Fed Farmers. Mike, you've just said that you are. That's cool, but we don't have that formally captured anywhere. So the skills matrix is essentially an opportunity for us to be able to understand and canvass your skills, and then to be able to come back with a recommendation on what an independent member may look like for any of the committees that we were going to consider. The decisions around independence, as Leadham has demonstrated, support some good governance practice. In terms of an independent to operations and regulatory, there are a lot of special interest groups that could quite easily be on that committee. Federated Farmers is one. Fonterra have shareholders of a vast variety. Then there's special grains crops interest groups. There's forestry groups that could be represented. I think PKW was identified as a group. So it's quite hard to narrow down which one or two, and then at what point, how big does a committee get? I don't know, that's for you to decide, but essentially we've gone through using some guidance from Institute of Directors to identify some skills that we think would be good to uncover with you all around what you do possess, and then use that to form guidance on what skills you may need to address through independent members to committees. I've just clarified this is not talking about the remuneration. That is a later item on the agenda. It's just talking about skills matrix and canvassing those skills from you.
Thank you for the paper, and that is a very good paper. The reason why I supported that when we landed at that conclusion at our last meeting was because it is good governance practice, and you are right, we don't really have a good understanding of the skills and the skill sets of our councillors, and so because we are specifically and it was specifically decided that we're going to get an independent member on the Audit and Risk Committee, then this is a very good process to go through, because there was a lot of discussion on who should it be, how much should we pay them, how valuable are they going to be, is it worthwhile? So this is a very good first step in that process. We've never done that before, and we've never had an independent person on that committee before. Steve, would you like to talk to the notes that you wrote at all?
No, I'm happy to let the discussion go and happy to respond to any queries that councillors have.
Very good. Thank you. Donna.
So I support the skills matrix, and looking around the table of the Ops and Regs Committee, the existing skill set would be significantly enhanced with the addition of a commercial farmer. For approximately 35 years, TRC has had a federated farmers rep on 2 of our committees, as we've talked about. 35 years ago, TRC decided that federated farmers was needed in the tent and on the journey to achieve the necessary environmental outcomes. TRC is the envy of every other regional council in New Zealand. We've been on a journey together with the primary sector in Taranaki and have achieved some incredible outcomes for the environment without regulation at a huge cost to the primary sector. Why federated farmers? They're a membership organisation, any farmer can join, and the executive and are democratically elected. They represent the largest portion of farmers in Taranaki. The way federated farmers choose their representative is transparent, and they must report back to the executive after each meeting, so are accountable. I move a further recommendation that a farmer is elected to the Ops and Regs Committee now, and that TRC approach federated farmers for that farmer representative, and that option D is adjusted to only include the Audit and Risk Committee.
I'll second that, Chair.
I just wonder why you didn't have that speech prepared for the 4th of November, Councillor Grant, when the decision was made.
Well, one of the reasons could be that it wasn't actually listed as one of the items that we were going to discuss. It was only by discovering, looking at the list at the back of the page, that we discovered that that person was coming off.
Okay, all right. I recall it being discussed in the induction, and also was in there. So
It was only discussed on the policy and planning. And well, it was discussed overall about feds, and I think Councillor Hughes had quite a discussion about being very for these members, but we never actually came to a conclusion. But no, but I didn't notice, and I know a number of others didn't notice, that it had been taken, the feds rep had been taken off the Ops and Regs, and we really have to question how that can happen after 35 years without coming to a discussion with this council.
Through you, Chair.
I didn't realise it would come off. It was only because you pointed out.
Nicole?
The proposed structures were presented twice to councillors for consideration. And at no point did anybody say anything about any of it. They talked about federated farmers, you talked about policy and planning for sure, but I just want to understand how we presented something to you, the same document twice.
Because it's really hard to see something that isn't there, that we expect to be there.
Well,
And we talked about process.
I think that this
excuse
is,
me, Donna,
I put forward
if you could
a recommendation.
talk
We've had
through
a seconder.
excuse me, if you could talk through the chair, not directly to the.
Sorry, Chair.
Thank you. Have you finished?
Through you, Chair. At the end of the triennium, as per the Local Government Act, the council, you disband, you go through elections. It's the right of the new council to consider their committee memberships and structures. You've done that. They've been presented. You've also confirmed the minutes from the 4th November meeting. And yeah, I acknowledge you have put a motion. That's...
Yes, and at the end of the triennium, right, all the committees are disbanded and then you start again, hence why we're still waiting for some reps from a rep from New Plymouth on the policy and planning. At the same time, there is no longer a solid waste committee, for example. Okay, so that list that came to us, these are the new committees, these are the structures of the committees, these are the people that are going to be on the committees, including external reps. It was it was pretty clear that it was there. John.
Chair, can I ask a question because I'm new here? In terms of the document that was presented, who decided the structure and the population of those committees? I'm unaware of that.
So as with most papers that come to us, the paper came from officers.
Right.
So we
But
decided.
it came out of the induction that we had when those things were discussed. So recommendations, a little bit like the workshop we just had on the annual plan. This is the direction we're heading.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to go away and tidy this up in time for your first meeting. Is there anything you would like to raise at that point in time? Now,
Through you, Chair, I think the process we followed was correct, and now we've realised there is an omission that we would like to take up. And we feel there is that advantage of having a feed on the committee. And that's what's been moved and seconded. And I, for one, didn't realise that it was admitted initially. And now I'm seeking, as with probably Donna in the second, for a change. So we can put that right through this recommendation for appointment of independent members. How it came about is really irrelevant. We do have the opportunity to put it right now or to change it. So I'm happy to.
yeah, I'll get some guidance on that in a sec.
I mean, there's a lot of other committees here we could open up as well. If we're going to relitigate this, I think we probably need to go back to the start and look at the transport side of it and policy, the whole committee structure. Then, if we're going to change it now, we agreed, and it was put out there twice, and it was in the reg. It was there. I mean, if councillors didn't pick it up, that's not an omission or a fault of putting the presenting it to the council.
No, and it's certainly...
we did debate it, and we did have a discussion on it. And if you didn't see it, well, it was there, it was discussed. So we've made the decision, and I think rightly that they're in the policy area where they need to be. They can make the policy. The consenting one is really just a basically reporting committee, and the policy is based around the consents as well. I mean, if you breach a consent, you're going to get penalised. So that's just what happens.
And it is just a reporting committee that has changed over the years. It is no longer making those decisions.
No, it's not making the decisions.
Right, it's recommending.
The CEO makes those decisions, and that committee doesn't anymore. It's basically a reporting committee. So, I mean, the best place they can be is in the policy and plan to actually set that structure.
Thank you.
So I personally don't support the change.
As there's a motion has been put, Steve, can we accept that motion? How does it work?
I don't see any procedural issue with accepting a motion that says there should be farming skill sets on the committee and that you should fill that vacancy by approaching federated farmers. The matters for you to consider, which is what was in the paper and what was also discussed at the previous meeting, is there are other ways of attracting that skill set. The paper talks about, for example, public advertising process, and federated farmers, along with others, would be free to put forward a nomination through that process, for example, if you so choose to follow it. That's a valid option. But at the end of the day, the decision as to what approach you wish to follow is a decision for the council to make. The previous decision appointed a set of members to that committee. You would be changing the membership, and yes, the terms of reference would need to be amended to record the change in membership. But that's a procedural piece that I would recommend you probably add another motion to amend the terms of reference to record the addition of a member if that motion was passed. But and it's not revoking your previous decision, because you did not make a decision that there would not be a farming representative. You simply asked for advice on what are the skill sets that might be needed. And the advice is, if you're going to focus, is identifying skills required across the committee and indeed council as a whole as a matter of standard practice, as recommended by the IOD and all the general and all the rest of it, which we've done. But at the end of the day, it's for you to decide on how you wish to do it. It's a matter for you to consider.
So my understanding is that committee has 9 members at the moment. Would we therefore take a councillor off and add another member, or can we expand the size of that committee?
That is a decision again. There's no limit on numbers. You could have a committee of 30 or 40 if you wished. There are no statutory limitations on it.
That would
I
be
think
fun.
there's a practicality issue you want to think about in terms of the size of your committee. If you were to take a councillor off, you would be revoking a previous decision. And I would look to my colleagues to think about the implications of revoking a previous decision that's just been made.
There'd be no reason.
A change of procedural thing that you would wish to have public notice of. I suspect understanding orders would probably say it is a revocation of a previous motion, which would need to come forward. You could resolve to bring that forward to the next meeting.
But there'd be no reason to take a councillor off because it has no fiscal consequence whether...
No, it doesn't have any.
Exactly. So
Just
why
asking
would
if
you?
had to.
No, there's no absolute requirement. It's against a discretionary decision for you.
Tom?
Just a question, Chair. Do we have a conflict of interest for the 2 members that are identified members of Federated Farmers?
No.
You under Schedule 7, whatever cause it is, you are deliberately appointing members that are there to represent a particular interest group. They have to be aware of and declare conflicts of interest when they're dealing with matters that directly affect them, and it could create, for example, a pecuniary interest. So and you may recall, we went through the process of getting exemptions and we were doing the freshwater plan policy development process. We got exemptions for all of the all of our councillors that had primary sector interests, as well as the members of the policy and planning committee that had conflicts as well. We will need to redo that process again with the Auditor General as we move into the RMA reform process. If the Auditor General doesn't grant an exemption, then those members will have to stand down from consideration of any of those policy items when they came up.
Steve, I think Tom's question more
the
directly...
long and short of it is they don't have a conflict of interest to move and second the motion.
More directly relates to the motion on the table.
Oh, the motion on the table.
They've identified themselves as members of Federated Farmers.
So do they have a conflict of interest in that motion?
No, they don't.
Oh, I see. Do the councillors have if they've identified themselves as members of the group?
Today.
Generally, again, the rule around that is if it's a motion that's of benefit to the organisation and they're a member of the executive of that organisation,
Which they're not.
the advice would be they should stand aside. I don't know
None of you
whether
are.
whether any councillors are members of the executive of Federated Farmers,
No.
but if they were, then our advice would be they should stand aside from consideration. If they're just an ordinary member, then it's an interest in common with All Farm or the 800 or something members of Federated Farmers that they talked about.
So long short, there is no conflict in the moving
Yeah.
this motion.
Yeah.
So I think I'll accept the motion, okay, and I think we've discussed the viability of it, and it sounds like it's possible. I understand that you've considered the skills matrix and you've had a good read through that. I believe that one other consideration you would have to have is the remuneration aspect. I know it's not huge, but external members do need to be remunerated. Is that correct, Mike? Steve?
Chair, may I suggest you take a staged approach to this? Make your decisions today on the skills matrix. If that result of that identifies that there are gaps in the skills that a particular committee has that you may wish to address by having an independent, then we look to what sort of independent do we want. There's a number of ranges of ways of paying and external representatives from the relatively cheap to the relatively expensive. And so we would then come back to you with advice that says, that's the skills matrix, that's the skills gap you're looking to fix. This would be our suggestion to you. So my recommendation to you is a stepped approach.
Right, rather than just jumping into this.
Yeah, because you might come through that skills process and say, well, actually, there isn't a skills gap. We're comfortable and we don't. Or there is a skills gap, but it's a particular, we need financial accountants' advice, and they're hugely expensive.
Yeah, because this is largely pertaining to, if you go to page 37, primary sector knowledge. Knowledge of primary sector industries, e.g. dairy, beef, horticulture, operating within the region and good practice applicable to these industries. This is in the Operations and Regulatory Committee skills matrix.
Through you, Chair, we haven't
Yes.
accepted the skills matrix yet.
Sorry?
We haven't accepted the skill matrix yet. It's a recommendation to approve it. We haven't even done that.
Yes, but it's on here, so we're having a look at it. Nobody said we'd accept
So,
it.
Chair, I think it'd be helpful to clarify the motion that's been put on the table. As I understand it, the motion is all of the recommendations plus effectively a recommendation that overrides the earlier recommendations, because it's saying rather than a look at the Skills for Operations and Regulatory Committee, we're going to say we want to appoint a member from Federated Farmers. So actually the earlier recommendation needs to be changed. D needs to be changed for that motion to actually be valid and stand on its own.
And that's
Otherwise
what
we're going to have a conflicting resolution of the council which says circulate a skills matrix and op and reg and then appoint a Federated Farmers member.
I did say, and that D is adjusted to only include the Audit and Risk Committee.
Right, okay.
Or through the chair, it
Yes.
could well be, Steve, that because of the extent of representation, including a body of knowledge and practice, that a Federated Farmers representative may be the best person to bring that knowledge to the committee, as opposed to a farm advisor.
Yes.
Yeah,
Correct.
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, so that's the argument essentially.
So rather than it conflicting with a previous recommendation round,
It complies.
it complies to it, yeah.
John, you wanted to?
Just a question about the actual matrix rather than that part of it. It was on the filling out the request is to fill out the matrix, right? Now my computer won't change page, but I see it's only already on those committees that you fill out that. But wouldn't it be just as relevant to get everyone to fill them all out so that you get a wider view of what we've got?
Through you, Chair. So that's essentially three parts. The first part is for all of you as councillors collectively. And then the second part is for executive audit and risk, and the last part was around the stuff that related more to the Operations and Regulatory Committee. The reason that's broken down into those parts and the reason we're not asking all of you to fill all of it in is because, yes, it's cool on a collective council level that you've got those skills, but they probe and align more to the scope in terms of reference for those relevant committees. So if you wanted to fill it in, we wouldn't say no. However, we're encouraging those that are on to fill it in.
I think on that motion that's been tabled, it's quite obvious that Fed Farmers has a large geographical reach for the whole region. They've got the primary sector knowledge across multiple different parts of it. So I think they are ticking a lot of boxes quite in there without it sort of having to keep going longer, really.
So we can accept the motion as Donna suggested, Steve? Can we, or not?
Yes, you can. If I hadn't appreciated we'd crossed ops and regs out in that motion. I only heard the bit about adding Federated Farmers in, so that is fine. We'd probably also ask for some clarity on the Executive Audit and Risk Committee member. You'll see there's three options there in terms of how you want to remunerate them. It would be helpful to have some guidance on how you want to do that, because that will affect the how you want to deal with that issue, because that will affect the way in which we recommend you might go about approaching it.
Can you just, sorry, I've been momentarily stupid. Can you just repeat that, please?
So in the paper we talked, there was discussion, Councillor Walker raised last time, we shouldn't be paying big fees for a member of the Executive Audit and Risk Committee. They should have, because it's a cost we can't afford, effectively is what I've taken from his comments. Now, you have said at the last motion, we wish to have a member on the Executive Audit and Risk Committee. What you haven't dealt with is how do you want to remunerate them. We've given you 3 options there, suggested 3 options for remuneration. One, in accordance with our normal remuneration policy for external representatives. One, in which we would need to do some work using the Cabinet fees framework as a guide to work out what would that suggests would normally be paid for a member on this committee, or third approach of direct negotiation with an appointee. Understanding that issue of what are you prepared to pay will influence the way in which you might want to approach the identification of a suitable candidate for Executive Audit and Risk. Once we get through the skills matrix from you, we'll identify the skill sets, but also, and look at maybe again, we feel that, but having a sense of where you want to go on that issue is also helpful for that options work that will come back on both the gaps we need to fill, given the skills we already have amongst the members of that committee, and the approach that we suggest you go through.
So there are two issues, aren't there? There's dealing with whether the feds fill the gap on ops and regs, and then there is how we go about selecting the person for audit.
Yes.
So should we deal with the ops and regs first?
Yeah.
And otherwise I think they become unhelpfully enmeshed.
Yes.
So do we need to, indeed do we need to, obviously if we were to change that, do we need to add something in there?
Change ops and regs.
About the audit and risk.
Well, let's deal with ops and regs first and then worry about audit. Wouldn't that be sensible?
So is that a separate, is that part of all of these, the suite of recommendations, or should we?
So my suggestion would be perhaps we delete D out of the motion on that's on the table if it's the mover and seconder are happy with that, and then we address that issue in a round of second motions once the Ops and Reg Committee issue has been addressed.
And just so to make sure I'm absolutely clear that what's being proposed is that the space in the Ops and Regs Committee is to be filled by federated farmers. It is not federated farmers and someone else. So only one additional appointee.
Yes. Well, there is no space. We're creating a space.
Yes.
Okay. So that is the motion. We've taken D out for now. Are we still approving the schools matrix, etc.?
That's what I read the motion. That's what I understand the motion is. That skills matrix is approved, and all councillors are asked to complete it.
And a new D is.
And D becomes that there is a need for, I can't remember the exact wording of Councillor.
What have we got? We'll just get this
Cram's
right.
motion.
So
Farmers,
Councillor Cram
practical farming skills.
put forward a motion that recommended that recommendation D be amended to reflect an independent member should only be appointed to exec. And there was a mention that fed farmers should be reinstated to Ops and Reg.
So I move to recommend that a farmer is elected to the Ops and Regs Committee now, and that TRC approach federated farmers for that farmer representative, and that option D is adjusted to only include the Audit and Risk Committee.
You wrote the paper. Does that make sense?
I understand what Councillor Graham's proposing. I guess this paper is asking you to identify your own skills and then for us to come back to talk about what those options might be around filling it. And Leadham in her deputation gave some really good points about what those applications might be. I hear you, Donna, Councillor Graham, around the practical farming knowledge, etc. that you've pointed out. I just wonder if it's worth council considering doing the skills matrix and then we come back with that fulsome report that you're looking for that considers that option.
No, I'll put
That's
on
your
a
motion.
recommendation now. It's been seconded.
All right. So everyone clear on what the...
And I'd just like someone to read to me exactly what the motion is, please.
I move, so we're taking D out now though, aren't we?
Well, you're moving the,
Can I suggest for cleanliness of the process, leave D as it is without the and operations and regulatory, and insert a new recommendation E being Donna's recommendation, which might help everyone
That would
clarify.
make it clearer. I don't think it's helpful as D is currently worded given Donna's motion because it ties two
So it's meant to be a
together.
separate recommendation.
So let's do that. Let's
So
insert
that-
it.
that becomes
Your
E.
recommendation is E, a new E, and we'll move everything else down a letter.
And simply delete the words and Ops and Regs Committee from D.
From D.
Correct. So it would be D, notes the officers provide advice on recruitment options as a part of the future reporting consideration, whether an independent member should be appointed to the Executive Audit and Risk Committee.
Full stop.
New recommendation E.
Do you want me to read it out?
Yep, so that Marie's got it noted correctly.
That a farmer is elected to the Ops and Regs Committee now, and that TRC approach federated farmers for that farmer representative. I can give it to you, Marie.
Yeah.
okay, should this motion, we've got it, is the seconder still happy with it?
Yes, I am.
Should the motion fail, we go back to these recommendations, just so that you understand.
Yes.
Okay, so we have a motion on this.
Should we not be considering E separately? If we don't agree with E?
If you don't agree with E, we'll let this, you could vote, you vote against this motion, then we go back to what's here,
Yeah.
written here.
That's right.
Okay, with no other amendments. So motion E on the table. All those in favour, put your hand up so we can count. Passes. Okay. Well done. Any against? One. Glad we got through that. Okay, so we're going to do the schools matrix and you'll circulate whatever needs to be circulated and pull it out to your best. Councillor remuneration, tab number 12. Who's speaking to this?
One more question about the skills matrix and the filling in.
Well,
of
before you
documents.
do, I wonder whether the feds want to leave.
Which one? Yeah, that was Donna and Mike. And Donna and Mike, that was it. They moved the whole suite. Yeah, yeah.
Thanks for taking the time.
Just a question is
Yes.
that in fact, this is very limited, isn't it? Because obviously councillors are elected, appointees from district councils are appointed. And so what this covers is just a couple of people. Is that not discussed? As far as the skills matrix is concerned.
Well, I think it's good practice and it's good to know what's the problem. It's not a test that you could pass or fail. It's not an IQ test.
There is going to be very few people who we haven't much chance to do anything soon on this matter at all.
Well, I imagine the chairman has taken into account what his knowledge is of various people's skills. And that's why my capacity to knit well means I'm chair of Ops and Regs.
And therein lies, hence you had the chairman's recommendations and which you all agreed to as the makeup of those committees. Okay, that's been done, but this is just good practice, and moving forward we'll have a better understanding of, there'll be things that I don't know about some of you and officers don't, because that all goes back to the original comment was, well, perhaps officers, if they wanted to know something about the farming sector, they could go and ask so-and-so, okay? And it kind of relates a little bit back to those special roles that were set up by, in the last term too, that nobody was really aware of. So if we see from that matrix some really strong skill sets in certain areas, and we're aware of some of them, but not all of them, then you would go and talk to that person about the future of energy in Taranaki, or some extra stuff on the port that happened previously that you might not have otherwise known. John?
That was my point on my question earlier, is if it was about learning more about what's around the table, why not everyone do everything?
Yeah, well,
Right? Yeah. Rather than be specific. Yeah.
And there's some modest people around this table who have not shone their light as they should.
Exactly. Don't be shy when it comes to that.
Yes, is it?
All right.
That's why.
Okay, Neil?
Yep.
Okay, next item. I've already introduced it. Remuneration. Amy, thank you. And Neil, your microphone's not on.
Thank you, Chair, and through you, the purpose of this memorandum is to receive and consider the Remuneration Authority's elected member remuneration for 25-26 year. I'll just cover off a few points before we get to the options. So the total remuneration pool is 500,449. In addition to that is the chairperson's salary set and the minimum allowable remuneration. The stipulations around that pool are that the whole pool must be used and that the council cannot choose to use a lesser pool, and that this council will need to decide the base remuneration for councillors that have no additional responsibilities. So that could be the minimum set by the authority, or that could be higher. What we have presented is 3 options for consideration. One, that the pool is split evenly. 2, that we use the same ratios to divvy that up as what we have done in previous years, using the new minimum allowable at 40,357. Or a further option that we again use those same ratio to divvy that up as we have in previous years, but that the minimum is set by what the previous council determined the minimum, which is slightly higher than the remuneration. The paper also includes the changes to the members' allowances and recovery of expenses. Happy to take any questions or...
Has there been an increase to the pool since last time, Amy?
Quite a significant increase, yes.
Sorry?
Yeah, yes, there has been a significant increase to the pool.
Percentage-wise?
From memory, it was around 12%.
Okay.
Yeah.
Same as our rates.
Chair,
Yeah.
Chair and that was after a period where the pool had stayed almost unchanged over a 2 to 3 year period. So
Yes.
I suspect there's an element of catch-up in
It's
there.
only set once a training.
It's addressed each year by the Remuneration Authority, but the Remuneration Authority had not changed our pool for 2 or 3 years.
Got it. Questions for Amy or Mike?
Well, I don't think I haven't got a question as such, but looking at the options, I do believe that the chair of those 4 committees certainly do a lot more work than just an ordinary councillor. There's a lot more responsibility in those chair structures. So I certainly wouldn't recommend option 1. And going into what we're going into, I would support because of the extra workload and where we're going to be and what we have to do going forward. Option 3 would be my recommendation along those lines.
Okay, so we have Tom spoken in favour of option 3. Jonathan?
Through the chair. So in paragraph 25, if there was a new committee established, how would that be in terms of remuneration allocation? How would you address that now, considering that could be created in time to come?
Yeah, so what we've proposed is that the council not make an allowance for additional responsibilities at this stage. However, as you say, if that did happen, that they may wish to consider at that time. Any decisions that we make here go through the Remuneration Authority are subject to that. If there was a change...
Chair, you would re-litigate the process we're doing exactly now.
Well, logically, the extra allocated to the chairs would be there'd have to be recalculation allocated to the extra one.
So Chair, the pool would remain at 500,449, you would just say, we have a chair, we wish to, of another committee, we wish to allocate that additional responsibilities allowance for that, and you would then make a recommendation to the Remuneration Authority. So following this decision, your recommendations will go to the Remuneration Authority, they will confirm or otherwise those recommendations. If there's a change, we just send an update to them and ask them to reconfirm.
Yeah, the reason why I asked that question is because the full amount is allocated.
Yes.
So you have to reallocate it and reduce others.
Correct, the
Is
pool
that correct?
won't change. Yep, that's correct.
And is that a lengthy process, or are they pretty quick at the Remuneration Authority? If we wanted to reject that.
The Remuneration Authority itself is reasonably timely. It's the gazetting process that usually takes a few weeks. But they tend to backdate the decisions. So these decisions here will get backdated to the time that you were appointed into those positions. So they tend to. So even if there's a delay, the backdating addresses that.
So I know that some of our joint committees no longer exist, but the likes of the Stadium Committee, in the past, the chair of the Stadium Committee has been remunerated for that. We're not addressing that now because that isn't even up and running yet. Is that something we'll look at later?
Correct. And Chair, at this stage, the chair of that committee, the committee has not met and it has not elected a chair. There's no guarantee that a TRC member will be a chair. I would suggest that would be a conversation between yourself and the Mayor of New Plymouth District Council. No, we haven't provided any allowance for that in this allocation.
And in the past, I mean, civil defence this time, I'm absorbing that one, so there's no extra there. There used to be a solid waste and
yeah. So through you, Chair,
some context.
So you're allocating a pool and you're allocating different amounts to reflect workload, as Councillor Cloak was intimating. So the decision for you, when you consider if one of our councillors is the chair of the Stadium Committee, at this stage it only meets a couple of times a year. Is that a sufficient workload that you wish to remunerate that additional workload and responsibility, in which case you would reallocate the pool. I think, and similarly, we've mentioned the Waitara Committee there, and if a councillor is a chair of that committee, then that may need to be addressed. But then you could look at if there was an independent or a iwi hapu representative as the chair, then you could use the fund to render. So there's different options there.
And as regards the deputy chairperson, policy and planning chairperson, they're one and the same person at the moment. But if, for instance, Benita wanted to step down as chair of policy and planning, what impact does that have, I presume? Does the deputy's role...
I think, I'm guessing the deputy would stay at the same level as the other chairs, and the other chairs would come down slightly to fill the gap.
Chair, that is
in theory.
That is a decision that you would need to make as a council going through this process. So it's just an iterative process. So each time you make a change, a substantive change like that, you would reconsider it, you would resubmit it to the Remuneration Authority, you would implement it.
Okay. Yeah, because there may well be a spatial planning committee or something. Who knows? We don't exactly know. This is what we've got at this point in time, but it will most likely change.
Correct, Chair.
Got it. So Tom's spoken in favour of
option 3.
Option 3.
Move that.
You're moving that. Seconder.
Yep.
Thanks, Lee. All those in favour?
Aye.
So that's all the recommendations, including option 3. We're at which is our recommendation number 6.
Right.
Thank you very much. 13. Amy, item number 13, page 145, committee appointees remuneration. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so the second memo is around the external committee appointees remuneration. As with previously, committee members have been set a meeting fee based on the hours of preparation and the hours to attend the meeting, and the hourly rate we're recommending is $104 an hour, which is the remunerations determination for a member of a hearing committee. So we have previously used that rate. It was previously 93, it's now 104. And the preparation and meeting time, we've remained consistent from what it was, which was 5 hours for both policy and planning and the operations and regulatory committee. So this equates to $520 per meeting. We have also had an annual retainer portion, previously set at $5,000, which we're recommending to be $5,600. So this would result in an external representative receiving $9,160 per annum. The current levels of the hours and the retainer were last reviewed and consulted with iwi in 2022. So we are putting forward options to accept the proposal or to review and further discuss the hours in the annual retainer.
Thank you, Amy. So probably this is for you, Mike. Should this recommendation be accepted, where do we find the extra $27,000 we'll be paying a Federated Farmers rep that was unbudgeted for?
Oh, you mean over the 3 years? Over 3 years?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Through you, Chair, that was it's part of that budget. We've provided for external representatives.
Yes. We've filled the job.
I can't remember whether we specifically moved out the Federated Farmers representative when you made your November decision, so I'd have to double check that. We have ups and downs and movements in the budgets all the time.
There is a budget there, and
there is a budget there,
yeah.
and the governance budgets. They don't change. We have ups and downs and movements in the budgets all the time.
Yeah, and this is just to clarify, this is independent of any pool that we're given.
Correct.
Any comments on this?
Just a question, Chair. If that independent person lives in Invercargill, will we be paying the flights there and back?
What do you think?
No.
What do you think we should do? Mike?
Through your Chair, it's you pay the travel expenses of councillors and external reps to attend meetings. If you appoint a councillor from, an external representative from somewhere else in the country, you would be covering their travel expenses.
Or indeed a councillor from elsewhere in the country. It's an issue that's topical around the sector at the moment, because there are councillors that live outside their patch quite frequently.
Those of us
I've known councillors living in Europe who are members of New Zealand councils. So,
well, that's usually because the cost of a by-election would be greater than the cost of them attending those meetings elsewhere.
Yeah, and I do remember, and you would too, Mike, that we had somebody living in the Hawke's Bay turning up to our meetings here. We were apparently paying for that, but we do have Zoom, and it wouldn't be. I don't think being remote would exclude anybody if we found a really, really good person for that committee.
But you'd reasonably expect, I would have thought, that we could find an appropriate external person to assist us in audit, possibly in this island. And even more likely this province, I would have thought.
Yes. Any more questions?
I have one.
Yes.
If we found someone that was exceptional that is going to sit on our audit and risk committee, would this be the standard rate of pay we would pay them, or would we be, is this the standard rate of pay that would be offered to that person? That's my question.
Chair, in the previous agenda item, there were 3 options provided for consideration. This paper wasn't specifically written with the independent member of the executive audit risk in mind. but certainly it could be guidance for you to think about. It could be one of the options you do. As I said, and when we were discussing the previous item, and I think this is where you need to do this stepped approach and work your way through it step by step. Do the skills matrix, identify where your strengths and where your gaps might be, and then you would say, right, we've identified a gap or not, but if you identify a gap and you want to address that gap in membership of the Executive Audit and Risk Committee, you would then go out and target someone with those skills. What I think was being considered in that previous paper was to say, well, depending on what that skill set looks like, there are market rates for those sorts of skills. If you're missing something that's really rare and really valuable, you might be prepared to pay more than something that's relatively commonplace and more easily fillable. So my suggestion is, this is dealing with the external reps as we've currently got them, area reps, federated farmers, and all the rest of it. Let's leave this paper as is and suggest that you go through a stepped process with the appointment to Executive Audit and Risk Committee, and remuneration is one of the latter steps.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just thought we,
Ask your question.
yeah, just noted this wasn't binding over that Audit and Risk of it. Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Recommendations are there on page 145, A through to G. I will move them. Could we have a seconder, please? Susan, thank you. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? There are none. Date of the next ordinary meeting, 24th of February. Karakia to close. That's fine, nine. Karakia to close. Kia ora rumai, ora, haka, hawaia, ki runga, ki raro, ki roto, ki waho, rere, ai,
Karakia whakai.
not just yet.